The snow fell thick over Manhattan that December night, each flake a small ghost drifting past the 40th floor windows of the Thornton penthouse. Marcus Thornton stood alone in his study, a tumbler of Macallan 25 forgotten in his right hand, watching the city blur into white silence below. The ice clinked as his grip tightened. 3 years since Jessica walked out. 3 years since he'd heard those words echo through these same marble halls. I never wanted this life, Marcus.
I never wanted her.
Her. Emma. Their daughter. 5 years old now, small for her age, with eyes that saw too much and spoke too little. Autism spectrum, the doctor said. High functioning, but fragile. She needed consistency, patience, love. Jessica had none to give. The ink on the divorce papers was barely dry when his ex-wife married a tech billionaire in Palo Alto, a man whose fortune made the Thornton empire look quaint. Marcus had gained full custody by default. Jessica didn't contest it, didn't even ask for visitation. He drained the whiskey, feeling nothing. Across the city, in a third-floor walk-up above a bodega in the Bronx, Sophia Hart counted crumpled bills under the flicker of a dying fluorescent bulb. $37. Not enough for the overdue electric bill. Not enough for the nursing home payment due in 4 days. She pressed her palms against her temples, still wearing the pale blue scrubs from her shift at Mercy General. 12 hours on her feet. 20 hours of chaos in the pediatric ward, holding the hands of sick children while their parents wept, or raged, or simply disappeared. Her phone buzzed, another text from Sunrise Senior Care. Her mother's account was 60 days past due. They were using words like alternative arrangements now. Sophia's stomach twisted. She'd visited Helen Hart yesterday during her lunch break. Her mother hadn't recognized her, just stared out the window, humming a melody Sophia couldn't place, fingers moving over phantom piano keys. Alzheimer's was a thief. It stole memories first, then dignity, then everything. Sophia pulled on her winter coat, thin, second-hand, bought 3 years ago, and headed into the snow. Friday night meant a 4-hour shift at the Blue Note Cafe, playing piano for tips. If she was lucky, maybe $60. If the crowd was generous, maybe $80. Every dollar counted. Every cent went toward keeping her mother in a place that still had heat, still had nurses who remembered to check if Helen had eaten. The cafe was half empty when she arrived. A handful of college students nursed overpriced lattes while pretending to study. An elderly couple sat in the back, holding hands across a small table. Sophia slid onto the piano bench, flexed her cold fingers, and began to play. Chopin first, Nocturne in E-flat major. The notes fell like the snow outside, delicate and inevitable. No one looked up. She transitioned into something lighter, a jazz standard, Autumn Leaves. Her fingers found the familiar patterns, muscle memory carrying her through, while her mind drifted to the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter. $80,000. That was what her father's final hospital stay had cost. David Hart, once a CEO, once a man who wore custom suits and shook hands with governors, had died in a county hospital bed, with nothing but Medicaid and his daughter's hand to comfort him. Victor Kane had destroyed him. Sophia's jaw tightened as she played. Victor Kane, the man who'd smiled at family dinners, who'd called her father his closest friend, who'd signed contracts that turned out to be traps. David Hart lost everything. Company, savings, reputation, because he'd trusted the wrong person. The stress had killed him. Massive coronary, the doctors said. But Sophia knew better. Victor Kane had murdered her father as surely as if he'd held a gun. And now Victor Kane was richer than ever, expanding his empire while the Hart family drowned. Sophia's fingers stumbled over a chord. She recovered quickly, forcing herself back into the rhythm. Anger wouldn't pay the bills. Anger wouldn't keep her mother safe. She played until 11, collected $43 in tips, and walked home through streets that had turned treacherous with ice. The apartment was freezing. She turned the heat down to save money, wore 2 sweaters to bed, and dreamed of nothing. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Marcus woke at 5:30, as he always did, and followed the routine that structured his life. Shower, shave, black coffee, no sugar, check the overseas markets, review the day's schedule. At 7, he walked down the hall to Emma's room. She was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her favorite stuffed bear, Mr. Patches, worn nearly bald from years of fierce hugging. She didn't look up when Marcus entered. Her fingers traced patterns on the bear's fabric, over and over, the same motion she'd repeat for hours if no one intervened. He sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to touch her without warning. Touch could be overwhelming for Emma, unpredictable. Her voice was small, distant. Snow stopped. Marcus glanced at the window. She was right. The storm had passed, leaving the city buried under 8 inches of white. It did. Want to build a snowman later? Emma's fingers kept moving. Snowmen melt. Everything melts, he thought. Everything ends. But he smiled anyway, the expression feeling like a mask. We'll build him in the shade. He'll last longer. She didn't respond. Marcus stayed for another minute, watching his daughter exist in whatever world her mind had built. Then rose and went to make breakfast. Pancakes, shaped like bears. Emma would eat them if they were the right shape, the right temperature, served on the blue plate, never the white one. Patterns mattered. Consistency was survival. Rosa Martinez arrived at 8, the housekeeper who'd been with the Thornton family for 22 years, who remembered Marcus as a grieving boy when his mother died, who'd held him through the divorce when Jessica left. She was 60 now, her hair silver, her hands rough from decades of work, and she loved Emma with a fierceness that sometimes made Marcus's chest ache. She took one look at him and shook her head. You didn't sleep again? It wasn't a question. Marcus poured her coffee. I slept enough. Sleeping and resting aren't the same thing. Rosa hung up her coat, already moving toward the stove to take over breakfast duty. You can't run yourself into the ground, cariño. Emma needs you healthy. He wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy. Instead, he went to his office, opened his laptop, and lost himself in the only thing that made sense anymore. Work. Numbers didn't lie. Contracts didn't betray. Real estate development was clean, logical, predictable. Unlike people. Unlike love. Unlike every relationship he'd ever trusted. The hours blurred. He approved 3 deals, killed 2 more, and was deep into a financial projection when his phone rang. William Thornton, his father. Marcus answered on the 3rd ring. Dad. William's voice was gravel, weakened by age and illness, but still carrying authority. Come to the hospital. We need to talk. Not a request. Never a request with William. Marcus checked the time, 2 in the afternoon, and grabbed his coat. Mercy General Hospital occupied a sprawling complex in the Bronx, a place Marcus rarely visited. His father had been admitted 3 days ago with kidney failure, the culmination of years of hypertension and stubborn refusal to follow medical advice. Now he was on dialysis, waiting for a transplant that might never come. Donors were rare. William was 71, not an ideal candidate. The waiting list stretched for years. Marcus found his father in a private room on the 8th floor, hooked to machines that beeped rhythmic reminders of mortality. William looked smaller than Marcus remembered, shrunken inside his hospital gown, but his eyes were still sharp. He waved away pleasantries. "Sit down. I don't have time for small talk." Marcus sat. Outside the window, the city sprawled, gray and cold under a sky heavy with more snow. He waited. William Thornton didn't summon people for casual conversation. His father's next words landed like stones. They found a match. Marcus straightened. For the transplant? A perfect match. Living donor. Willing to proceed immediately. Relief flooded through him, unexpected in its intensity. He and his father had never been close. William was too much like Jessica, too focused on empire building to bother with emotions. But death was different. Death was final. That's incredible. When's the surgery? There are conditions. Of course there were. Marcus's relief curdled. What kind of conditions? William's gaze was steady, unreadable. The donor is a woman named Helen Hart. She's in the early stages of Alzheimer's, living in a nursing home in Queens. She has a daughter, Sophia Hart, 28, a nurse at this hospital. Marcus frowned. I don't understand. What do these people have to do with anything? Helen Hart is my sister. The words hung in the sterile air. Impossible. Marcus stared at his father, searching for signs of dementia, medication side effects, anything that would explain the absurdity of what he'd just heard. You don't have a sister. You're an only child. William's expression didn't change. I thought so too. Until 3 weeks ago, when a lawyer contacted me about Helen's condition. Turns out my parents gave her up for adoption when she was born. I was 4 years old. They never told me. Marcus's mind raced, trying to process family secrets, decades old, surfacing now like corpses from a thawed lake. How did she find you? DNA testing. One of those ancestry websites. She did it 2 years ago, before the Alzheimer's got bad. The results showed we were siblings. She hired someone to track me down, but by the time they made contact, she was already deteriorating. And the daughter? Sophia? Only child. Father died a year ago. David Hart. Used to run an import-export business until he got swindled by Victor Kane. Lost everything. Sophia's been working 2 jobs trying to pay off medical debt and keep her mother in care. Victor Kane. The name stirred recognition. Marcus had done business with Kane Enterprises twice, both times coming away feeling like he'd narrowly avoided a trap. The man was a snake, brilliant and ruthless. If he'd destroyed David Hart, it had been deliberate and thorough. William continued, his voice flat, clinical. Helen wants to donate her kidney to me. She's lucid enough to understand what that means, at least in her better moments. But she has one condition for the transplant. Marcus already knew, could feel it coming like a blade. What condition? She wants Sophia to marry into the Thornton family. She's convinced it's the only way to make amends for being separated from me. Some kind of symbolic reunion, joining our families. The absurdity of it struck Marcus like a physical blow. That's insane. You can't arrange marriages in the 21st century. I can if I want to live. William's voice hardened. And Helen can if she's the one holding the kidney I need. It's her organ, her choice. There has to be another way. Pay her more. Set up a trust fund for the daughter. Sophia won't take money. I already tried. She's proud, stubborn, probably inherited it from her father. The only thing she cares about is keeping her mother safe and comfortable for whatever time Helen has left. William leaned forward, the motion making his monitors spike. Here's the deal. You marry Sophia Hart. 1 year, contract marriage. After that, you can divorce quietly. Sophia gets $200,000, her mother's medical bills paid for life, and a guarantee that Helen stays in the best facility money can buy. You get a wife you can ignore for 12 months. I get to live. Marcus stood, needing space, needing air. This was madness. This was the kind of archaic arrangement his great-grandfather might have made, trading children like livestock to secure business deals or social position. You're asking me to buy a wife? I'm asking you to save my life. What about Emma? You expect me to bring a stranger into her life? She barely tolerates Rosa, and Rosa's been with us for years. Emma needs stability. A mother figure might help. She had a mother. Jessica abandoned her. William's face went cold. Then find someone who won't. Sophia Hart works with autistic children for a living. She might be exactly what Emma needs. The manipulation was elegant, perfectly aimed. Marcus hated his father for it, and hated himself more for feeling the barbs sink home. Emma did need help. The therapist said as much. Consistent, patient, specialized care. And Marcus was failing. He could manage businesses worth billions, but couldn't reach his own daughter. Couldn't coax more than a handful of words from her each day. Couldn't stop her from slipping further into the silent world inside her head. He turned to the window, watching snow begin to fall again. Somewhere in this hospital, Sophia Hart was working, unaware that her life was about to be bartered like a commodity. He should refuse, should tell his father to find another donor, another way, anything but this medieval horror show. But William was dying, and Emma was drowning, and Marcus was so desperately, achingly alone. His voice came out hollow. I need to meet her first. She's on shift now, pediatric ward, 4th floor. Of course his father already knew. William Thornton always did his research. Marcus took the elevator down, each floor a descent into certainty he didn't want. The pediatric ward was controlled chaos, nurses moving with practiced efficiency, the distant crying of children, the smell of antiseptic barely masking something deeper and sadder. He approached the nurses' station, where a young woman with kind eyes and exhausted features looked up from a chart. Not her. Too blonde, too tall. He asked for Sophia Hart. The nurse pointed down the hall. Room 412, but she's with a patient, so you'll need to wait. Marcus didn't wait. He walked to 412, looked through the window, and stopped. Inside, a small boy, maybe 6 years old, was screaming, thrashing against the hands of 2 nurses trying to draw blood. The child's face was red, twisted with terror, and neither nurse could hold him still enough to find a vein. One of them called for help. A moment later, a third figure entered the room. Sophia Hart was smaller than he'd expected, barely 5'4", with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail and scrubs that had seen too many shifts. But she moved differently than the other nurses. Slower, calmer. She said something Marcus couldn't hear through the glass, then did something that made no sense. She sat on the floor. Just sat down, cross-legged, a few feet from the screaming boy, and didn't try to touch him. Didn't speak. Didn't crowd his space. She simply sat, patient and still, and began to hum. The tune was soft, barely audible. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The same song Marcus sang to Emma when nightmares woke her. The same melody his mother had sung to him 30 years ago. The boy's screams began to soften. His thrashing slowed. He looked at Sophia with wide, terrified eyes, and she smiled. Not the professional smile Marcus saw on every hospital worker, but something genuine and warm. She kept humming, kept waiting. Slowly, impossibly, the boy crawled toward her. Sophia opened her arms, and the child collapsed into them, sobbing now instead of screaming. She held him, rocking gently, while the other nurses stood frozen in shock. Then Sophia whispered something in the boy's ear. He nodded. She rolled up his sleeve with movements so careful they seemed choreographed, and the boy didn't flinch. One of the other nurses approached with the needle, hands shaking, and drew blood in a single smooth motion. The boy whimpered but didn't pull away. Sophia kept humming until it was done. Marcus stood in the hallway, unable to move, watching this stranger work magic he'd never managed with his own daughter. When Sophia finally emerged from the room 5 minutes later, she nearly walked into him. She looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" Her eyes were green, he noticed, the kind of green that reminded him of summer, though he couldn't remember the last time he'd thought about seasons in any context other than fiscal quarters. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow and looked like she hadn't slept in a week. His throat was dry. "I'm Marcus Thornton." Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by something harder. Anger, maybe. Or disgust. She glanced back at room 412, then at him, and her voice was ice. "I know who you are. Your father told me you might stop by. We need to talk. I'm working. After your shift, then." Sophia crossed her arms, a defensive posture that made her look even smaller. "I don't have anything to say to you. Your mother's kidney is the only thing keeping my father alive. That gives us plenty to talk about." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, Marcus thought she might slap him. Instead, she spoke quietly, each word precise. "My mother is dying. Alzheimer's is terminal. But in whatever time she has left, she deserves dignity and comfort. Your father offered to pay for the best care available if I agreed to this insane arrangement. So yes, Mr. Thornton, I'll marry you. I'll play whatever role you need me to play in public. But don't mistake necessity for willingness. I don't want your money. I don't want your name. I just want my mother safe." She turned to walk away. Marcus caught her arm without thinking, and she flinched. He released her immediately, horrified by the instinct, by the desperation that had made him reach out. Her eyes met his, and he saw exhaustion there, not just from one shift or one night, but years of it, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from fighting losing battles every single day. His voice came out softer than intended. "I have a daughter, Emma. She's 5. Autistic. She doesn't talk much, doesn't trust easily. But I saw what you did in there with that boy. How you calmed him. I've been trying to reach Emma for 3 years, and I can't. I don't know how." Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Not warmth exactly, but a crack in the armor. "Autistic children aren't puzzles to solve. They're people. They just experience the world differently." "I know that." "Do you?" She searched his face, looking for something. "Or do you see her as broken? Something that needs fixing?" The question landed like an accusation because it was true. Partly true. Marcus loved Emma desperately, but sometimes when he looked at his daughter, all he saw was failure. His failure. Jessica's failure. A child who'd been hurt by the people meant to protect her, who'd built walls no one could breach. He forced himself to answer honestly. "I see her as alone, and I don't know how to reach her." Sophia's expression softened fractionally. "Then maybe we can help each other. I'll marry you. I'll try to be what Emma needs, at least for a year. But I have conditions too." "Name them." "We don't lie to her. We don't pretend this is something it isn't. Children know when adults are being false. It confuses them, hurts them. So we're honest. We tell her this is an arrangement to help both our families. Marcus nodded slowly. Agreed. And when the year is over, we end things cleanly. No drama, no using Emma as leverage or weapon. We both walk away, and she gets to keep whatever relationship she's built with me, if that's what she wants. Agreed. Sophia studied him for another long moment, and Marcus had the uncomfortable sense of being dissected, examined for fractures and faults. Finally, she sighed. My shift ends at 6. There's a coffee shop on Amsterdam and 71st. Meet me there at 7. We'll work out the details. She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the organized chaos of the pediatric ward. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, wondering what he'd just agreed to, what trap he'd walked into with eyes wide open. He returned to his father's room. William was asleep, machines breathing for him, and Marcus sat in the chair by the window until visiting hours ended. Then he drove home through streets choked with snow, pulled Emma from Rosa's care, and tried to explain the inexplicable. Emma listened in silence, her fingers tracing patterns on Mr. Patch's. When Marcus finished, she asked only one question. Will she go away? Like Mommy? The fear in her voice broke something in him. I don't know, sweetheart. But I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe. Emma nodded, unsatisfied but resigned. At 5 years old, she'd already learned that adults made promises they couldn't keep. Marcus met Sophia at the coffee shop exactly at 7. She was still in scrubs, still looked exhausted, and ordered black coffee she didn't touch. They sat in a corner booth while strangers lived their normal lives around them and worked out the skeleton of their future. 1 year, separate bedrooms, public appearances as needed. Sophia would move into the penthouse, keep her job at the hospital, and spend time with Emma on a schedule they'd establish. Marcus would pay off all her mother's medical bills, ensure Helen Hart had the best Alzheimer's care available, and provide Sophia with a $200,000 settlement at the end of the contract. It was cold. Clinical. A merger, not a marriage. Sophia signed the papers 3 days later in a lawyer's office that smelled of old leather and older money. Marcus watched her hand move across the page, steady, unflinching, and wondered if she hated him. Probably. He was complicit in turning her into a commodity, a solution to problems not her own. She had every right to hate him. The wedding was set for the following Saturday. Small ceremony, immediate family only. William would undergo transplant surgery 2 days after, assuming the kidney was viable. Everything was happening too fast. A landslide Marcus couldn't stop even if he wanted to. And he did want to. Late at night, alone in his study, with the city lights bleeding through the windows, he wanted to call it off. Wanted to tell his father to die with dignity instead of buying life with someone else's sacrifice. Wanted to protect Emma from another loss when this inevitably fell apart. But he didn't. Because he was a coward, and his daughter needed help, and Sophia Hart was the first person in 3 years who'd looked at Emma and seen a child instead of a problem. The wedding took place in a small chapel in Midtown, just 10 people in attendance. William Thornton, pale and weak. Rosa Martinez, crying quietly. The lawyer who drafted the contracts. A judge who performed the ceremony with mechanical precision. And Emma, dressed in a flower girl dress she hated, clutching Mr. Patch's like a lifeline. Sophia arrived in a simple white dress that probably cost $300, carrying a small bouquet of white tulips. No bridesmaids, no family on her side except the mother who couldn't attend, couldn't remember that her daughter was getting married. The ceremony lasted 11 minutes. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus leaned in, intending something perfunctory and brief. But Sophia's eyes were full of tears she wouldn't let fall, and his chest constricted with an emotion he couldn't name. The kiss was chaste, barely a brush of lips, but it felt like a goodbye to something neither of them had ever really had. They signed more papers, took photographs that would sit in drawers never displayed. Emma presented Sophia with a single flower from the bouquet, and Sophia knelt down, careful, slow, giving the child space to retreat, and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. Emma didn't retreat. She leaned in, let Sophia hug her for exactly 3 seconds, then pulled away and returned to Rosa's side. Progress. Microscopic, fragile, but progress nonetheless. The reception was dinner at an upscale restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who never smiled. Marcus watched Sophia pick at salmon she didn't eat, watched her answer polite questions from Rosa with practiced grace, watched her exist in this world she didn't belong to with a dignity that made his throat tight. At 10, they left. Marcus drove them to the penthouse in silence. Sophia stared out the window at the city passing by. All those lives, all those strangers who'd wake up tomorrow unchanged. Her wedding ring was simple gold, too large for her finger. She'd need to have it resized. The penthouse was dark when they arrived. Rosa had taken Emma home with her for the night, giving the newlyweds privacy neither wanted. Sophia stood in the foyer, taking in the marble floors, the abstract art worth more than her annual salary, the view of Central Park spread out like a blueprint of wealth. Marcus set down her suitcase, one suitcase, everything she owned, and gestured toward the stairs. Your room is on the 2nd floor, next to Emma's. I'm on the 3rd floor, so you'll have privacy. Sophia turned to look at him. You're not... No. He cut her off, voice harsher than intended. I don't sleep with people I don't love. This is a contract, not a real marriage. Her expression was unreadable. Right. Of course. An awkward silence stretched between them. Marcus wanted to say something, apologize, explain, something, but the words wouldn't come. He was too tired, too hollowed out from a day of pretending this was anything other than a transaction. Sophia saved him. I should unpack. It's been a long day. If you need anything, there's an intercom system. Press 3 to reach my room. I won't need anything. She climbed the stairs, each step careful, measured. Marcus watched her disappear into the 2nd floor hallway, then poured himself whiskey and stood by the window until dawn. He didn't see Sophia again until 11 that night, when a soft knock on Emma's door pulled him from his study. He found his daughter's room lit by a nightlight, Emma sitting up in bed with Mr. Patches and Sophia standing in the doorway, wearing an old NYU sweatshirt and pajama pants. Sophia saw him and immediately stepped back. I'm sorry, I heard her crying. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. Marcus looked at Emma. His daughter's face was blotchy, her eyes red. Bad dream? Emma didn't answer him. She looked at Sophia instead, and her voice was so small it almost disappeared. You're still here? Sophia knelt by the bed. I'm still here. You won't leave? Like Mommy? The question was a knife. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, to promise, to lie if necessary. But Sophia spoke first. I can't promise I'll never leave, Emma. People don't know the future. But I can promise I'll never leave without saying goodbye. And I'll never leave because of you. You're not the reason people go away. Emma absorbed this, her small face serious. Then she did something that stopped Marcus's heart. She held out Mr. Patches. Sophia took the bear gently, cradling it like something precious. Do you want me to stay until you fall asleep? Emma nodded. Sophia glanced at Marcus. He should object, should maintain boundaries, establish rules. Instead, he stepped back into the hallway and closed the door most of the way, leaving it cracked just enough to hear. Sophia's voice drifted out, soft and steady. She was humming. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The same song from the hospital, the same song Marcus sang when nothing else worked. He stood in the hallway for 20 minutes, listening to his daughter's breathing slow and deepen, listening to Sophia's patient presence fill the room with something that felt almost like safety. When she finally emerged, she looked surprised to find him waiting. She's asleep. Thank you. Sophia shrugged. She just needed to know someone cared. You're good with her. I've had practice. Sophia moved past him toward her own room, but Marcus caught her arm, gently this time, carefully. She stopped, but didn't pull away. He didn't know what he wanted to say, just that standing here in the dark hallway of his empty penthouse, listening to his daughter breathe easily for the first time in weeks, he felt something shift. Some small crack in the ice he'd built around himself. Sophia looked up at him, waiting. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, but there was kindness there too. Kindness he didn't deserve. His voice came out rough. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you're only here because you have no choice. But Emma, she needs... I know what Emma needs, Sophia interrupted softly, and I'll do my best to give it to her. Not because of the contract, not because of the money, but because no child should feel abandoned. She pulled free and disappeared into her room, leaving Marcus alone with the ghost of her words. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine established itself. Sophia kept her shifts at the hospital, working long hours in the pediatric ward. When she came home, and it was strange how quickly the penthouse became home, she'd check on Emma, read her stories, sit with her while the little girl traced patterns only she understood. Marcus watched from a distance, afraid to disrupt whatever fragile connection was forming. He'd never seen Emma respond to anyone the way she responded to Sophia. His daughter smiled more, spoke more, even laughed once when Sophia made funny voices while reading Where the Wild Things Are. Rosa noticed too. That girl's a miracle, she told Marcus one morning while preparing breakfast. Emma's coming out of her shell. It's only been 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a lifetime for a child. Rosa cracked eggs into a pan, her movements efficient from years of practice. And you, cariño, you look less like a ghost. Maybe having Sophia here is good for both of you. Marcus didn't respond. Couldn't. Because the terrifying truth was that Rosa might be right. He'd caught himself listening for Sophia's key in the lock when she worked late, found himself making coffee the way she liked it, black, no sugar, strong enough to strip paint. Noticed when she came home with shadows under her eyes that meant she'd lost a patient, when her smile was brittle from a particularly brutal shift. He told himself it was concern for Emma's sake. If Sophia burned out, Emma would suffer. That was all. Nothing more. The lie tasted bitter. On Thursday of the 3rd week, Marcus came home early to find Sophia at the piano in the music room. He didn't know she played, hadn't asked. The penthouse had a Steinway grand that had belonged to his mother, untouched for 20 years because hearing it made William's face go strange and tight. But Sophia was playing now. Canon in D. The notes filled the enormous room with something achingly beautiful, and when Marcus looked closer, he saw Emma sitting on the bench beside her, small hands resting on the keys without pressing them. Sophia was teaching her, patiently showing her where middle C lived, how to make the piano sing. Emma's face was rapt, focused in a way Marcus had never seen. She pressed a single key, tentative, careful, and the note rang out clear and pure. Sophia smiled, Perfect. You're a natural. Emma pressed it again and again, finding comfort in the repetition, in the predictable sound. Sophia let her, didn't rush or correct, just kept playing around that single C until it became part of the melody. Marcus stood in the doorway, hidden, watching his daughter discover music, watching Sophia give her this gift without fanfare or expectation. When the piece ended, Emma clapped, small, controlled pats of her palms together, and Sophia laughed. It was the first time Marcus had heard her laugh. Really laugh. Not the polite sound she made at dinner or the professional chuckle she gave Rosa's jokes. This was genuine joy, unguarded and warm, and it hit him like a physical blow. He was falling in love with his wife. The realization should have been absurd. They barely knew each other, slept in separate rooms, lived separate lives bound only by contract and convenience. But love didn't care about logic. It crept in through the cracks anyway, through late-night conversations when Emma's nightmares woke the household, through shared looks of exhaustion over coffee, through the way Sophia hummed while cooking eggs in the morning, and how she always left the light on in the hallway because Emma was afraid of the dark. Marcus told himself it didn't matter. In 10 months, Sophia would take her settlement and disappear. This was temporary, borrowed. He couldn't afford to forget that. But on Friday, when Sophia's birthday arrived, information he'd gleaned from the marriage certificate, he couldn't help himself. He had Rosa bake a small cake. Chocolate, because he'd noticed Sophia always chose chocolate when offered dessert. Just a small gesture, nothing that would make her uncomfortable. They surprised her after dinner. Rosa brought out the cake with a single candle while Emma watched with wide eyes. Sophia looked stunned, almost stricken. Rosa beamed. Make a wish, mija. Sophia stared at the flickering flame for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and blew it out, eyes closed. When she opened them again, they were wet. Marcus's chest constricted. We didn't mean to upset you. You didn't. Sophia's voice was thick. It's just... My father used to make me birthday cakes. Every year. Even when we had no money, even when things were falling apart, he'd find a way. This is the first birthday since he died. The grief in her voice was so raw that Marcus acted without thinking. He crossed to her chair, knelt down, and took her hand. I'm sorry. We should have asked first. No. Sophia squeezed his fingers, a brief pressure before letting go. No. This was kind. Thank you. Emma, watching this exchange with her serious eyes, slid off her chair and approached Sophia. She held out Mr. Patches. You can hold him. He makes sad better. Sophia took the bear, hugged it to her chest, and then hugged Emma. The little girl allowed it for 5 full seconds before pulling away, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. They ate cake in the kitchen, the 4 of them, Marcus, Sophia, Emma, and Rosa, and for a moment, it felt real. Like a family. Like something worth fighting for. The illusion shattered 3 days later when Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He was in his study reviewing contracts when the message appeared. She's lying to you. Check Helen Hart's bank records. $50,000 deposited from Victor Kane 2 months ago. Your wife is working for your enemy. Marcus stared at the screen, ice flooding his veins. Victor Kane. The man who destroyed Sophia's father. It made no sense. Why would Sophia take money from the person responsible for her family's ruin? Unless the ruin had been staged. Unless David Hart's bankruptcy was theater, a setup to position Sophia exactly where she was now, inside the Thornton family, with access to everything. Number. Marcus forced himself to breathe. This was paranoia. The text was from an unknown number, could be from anyone. Competitors, enemies, someone trying to sabotage his father's transplant. But doubt, once planted, grew roots. He spent the next hour trying to convince himself the text meant nothing. Failed. At midnight, he called his head of security and ordered a full financial investigation into Helen Hart. Every account, every transaction, every connection to Victor Kane or Kane Enterprises. The report arrived 48 hours later. Marcus read it alone in his study, whiskey untouched on the desk, each page another nail in the coffin of his fragile hope. $50,000, transferred from an offshore account registered to Kane Enterprises into an account belonging to Helen Hart, dated 2 months before Sophia agreed to the marriage. Photographs of Sophia meeting with Victor Kane, twice. Once at a coffee shop in Queens, once at a restaurant in Manhattan. Email metadata suggesting regular contact between Sophia and Kane's personal assistant. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Sophia Hart had been planted. A beautiful, patient trap designed to infiltrate the Thornton family and destroy it from within. Marcus sat with the evidence until dawn, feeling something inside him calcify back into stone. He'd been a fool. Again. Always. Every time he trusted, every time he opened even a crack in his armor, someone found a way to weaponize it. Emma's laughter from the hallway cut through his thoughts. He looked up to see his daughter running past his study door with Sophia chasing her, both of them giggling. Playing. Emma almost never played. Marcus stood, the report clutched in his hand, and walked to the doorway. Sophia saw him first. Her smile faltered when she registered his expression. "Marcus? What's wrong?" Emma, oblivious, grabbed Sophia's hand. "Tell her to come play, Daddy. Tell her." He looked at his daughter's hopeful face, at Sophia's concerned one, at the domestic scene that had felt so real just hours ago. And he made his choice. His voice came out cold, controlled. "Emma, go to your room." "But..." "Now." Emma's face crumpled. She looked between them, sensing the shift, and ran toward her room. Sophia watched her go, then turned back to Marcus with mounting alarm. "What's going on?" He held out the report. "Want to explain this?" Sophia took it, her hands trembling. Marcus watched her face as she read, watched confusion turn to horror, turn to something that looked almost like betrayal. When she looked up, her eyes were blazing. "This is fake. I never took money from Victor Kane." "The bank records don't lie." "Then they were forged!" Her voice rose, desperate. "Marcus, I met with Victor twice, yes, but only because he said he had information about my father's death. He claimed there was security footage from the night my dad died, proof that it wasn't just a heart attack. I thought I needed to know." "And the $50,000? "I don't know anything about $50,000. My mother's account is controlled by the nursing home. I don't even have access to it." Marcus wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But the evidence was right there, black and white, undeniable. Someone transferred that money. Someone connected to Victor Kane gave your mother $50,000 right before you agreed to marry me. Sophia's face went white. You think I'm working for him? For the man who destroyed my family?" "I think you're working for someone. Maybe you blame my family for what happened to your father. Maybe Victor Kane convinced you we were the real enemy. Or maybe..." He stopped, throat tight. "Maybe you're just very, very good at pretending." The words hit her like a slap. Sophia stepped back, holding the report like it might burn her. "I told you the truth," I have no idea where that money came from. But if you won't believe me, if you've already made up your mind, I have evidence. You have lies. Tears streamed down her face now, and Marcus felt each one like a knife. Someone is setting me up. Can't you see that? Someone wants you to think I'm the enemy. Who? Who would benefit from destroying this marriage? I don't know. Maybe the same person who sent you this report. Did you think of that? Or were you so ready to believe the worst of me that you didn't question where this information came from? She was right. The text had been anonymous, the investigation ordered in secret. He hadn't questioned the source because it confirmed everything he'd always feared, that he was unlovable, that anyone who showed him kindness wanted something, that he would always be betrayed. But doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with Emma's heart on the line. Marcus straightened, pulling on the CEO mask that never fully came off. Pack your things. I want you out by morning. Sophia's face shattered. Marcus, please. The contract is void. You'll receive nothing. Consider yourself lucky I'm not pursuing legal action for fraud. What about Emma? Her voice broke. You can't just... She'll think I abandoned her. Better she learns that lesson now than later. It was the cruelest thing he'd ever said. Marcus knew it the moment the words left his mouth, saw Sophia flinch as if he'd struck her. But he didn't take it back. Couldn't. Because if he backed down now, if he let himself feel the enormity of what he was doing, he would collapse entirely. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus watched something in her eyes die. The warmth, the hope, all of it extinguished. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, empty. I loved her. I want you to know that. I loved Emma. And I was starting to... She stopped, shook her head. It doesn't matter. You've made your decision. She set the report on the table, pulled off her wedding ring with shaking fingers, and placed it beside the damning pages. Then she turned and walked upstairs. Marcus stood in the hallway listening to her pack, listening to Emma's door open, to his daughter's confused questions, to Sophia's attempts to explain in a way a 5-year-old might understand. I have to go, sweetheart.
Why? I was good. I didn't do anything wrong.
You didn't. You're perfect. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and I have to leave.
Like Mommy?
A pause, then Sophia's voice, thick with tears. Not like Mommy. I'm leaving because your daddy asked me to. But Emma, I want you to remember something. You are smart and special and wonderful. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Promise me. I promise. Good girl. I love you. 30 minutes later, Sophia descended the stairs with her single suitcase. She didn't look at Marcus, didn't speak, just walked past him like he was already a ghost, pulled on her coat, and left. The door clicked shut with terrible finality. Marcus stood alone in the foyer of his penthouse, surrounded by wealth that meant nothing, and waited to feel vindicated, waited to feel safe. Instead, Emma's scream tore through the silence. He ran to her room and found his daughter on the floor, rocking back and forth, Mr. Patches clutched in her arms. She left. She left. She left. Rosa appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and her face went hard. What did you do? Marcus couldn't answer, couldn't explain. He knelt beside his daughter and tried to hold her, but Emma pushed him away with surprising strength.
You made her go! I hate you!
The words were knives, precisely aimed. Emma had never said she hated him, had barely spoken to him in complete sentences. And now, Her first clear, powerful statement was this. Rosa picked Emma up, the little girl sobbing against her shoulder, and looked at Marcus with something close to disgust. I hope whatever you did was worth it, because you just broke that child's heart. She carried Emma away, leaving Marcus alone in the empty room. He returned to his study, to the report that had destroyed everything, and read it again, looking for cracks, for signs of forgery, for anything that would prove Sophia innocent. He found nothing. At 3 a.m, his phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. Did you really think she loved you? Women like Sophia Hart only love money. You were always going to be her target. Good thing you cut her loose before she took you for everything. Marcus stared at the message, and something finally clicked. The phrasing, the timing, the certainty. This wasn't about Sophia at all. This was about him. Someone knew his history with Jessica, knew about his paranoia, his inability to trust. Someone had weaponized his trauma against him, and he'd fallen for it completely. But who? And why? The answer came at dawn when his phone rang. For Victor Kane. Marcus answered, voice cold. What do you want? Victor's laugh was smooth, oily. Just calling to congratulate you on the divorce. Smart move, getting rid of that gold digger before she ruined you, like her father ruined himself. You sent the report. Did I? Can't remember. I sent a lot of information to a lot of people. A pause. But between you and me, Marcus, you should thank me. Sophia Hart was dangerous. Just like her old man. David tried to compete with me, tried to outmaneuver me in business, and he paid the price. I'd hate to see the same thing happen to the Thornton family. Marcus's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. Stay away from my family. Your family? You mean the daughter who hates you now? Or the father who'll die without that kidney transplant? Victor's voice turned sharp. Oh, didn't you know? Helen Hart is no longer willing to donate. Something about her daughter being treated poorly. Funny how these things work out. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the growing light, the magnitude of his mistake finally sinking in. He'd destroyed his marriage, broken his daughter's heart, and killed his father. All because he couldn't trust. Couldn't believe that someone might actually care about him without ulterior motive. And now Sophia was gone. He grabbed his coat and ran. The apartment Sophia found was a 4th-floor walk-up in Astoria, Queens, wedged between a laundromat that never closed and a bodega with bars on the windows. 600 square feet, radiator heat that clanked like ghosts, water stains blooming across the ceiling in shapes that reminded her of continents she'd never visit. The landlord had looked at her single suitcase and asked for 3 months' rent up front. She'd paid it with the last of her savings, money she'd earmarked for her mother's care, and moved in that same night. The silence was unbearable. No Emma padding down the hallway at midnight with nightmares. No Rosa humming in the kitchen. No Marcus working late in his study, the warm light under his door the only proof he existed. Just Sophia and 4 walls, and the knowledge that she'd been exactly what he'd accused her of being. A mistake. She called Mercy General and picked up extra shifts, worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week until her supervisor pulled her aside and asked if everything was all right at home. Sophia lied and said yes, went back to the pediatric ward and threw herself into other people's emergencies because her own were too vast to touch. 3 days after she left the penthouse, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. The voice on the other end was male, smooth, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. Sophia Hart, or should I say Sophia Thornton, though I hear that didn't last long. She sat down on her apartment floor, still wearing scrubs from a 14-hour shift. Who is this? Victor Kane. I wanted to congratulate you on your brief marriage. Very enterprising, getting yourself into the Thornton family. Almost worked, didn't it? Sophia's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know about the $50,000 I supposedly deposited into your mother's account. Funny how money moves in this city. Even funnier how easily a man like Marcus Thornton believes what he wants to believe. The pieces slammed together with sickening clarity. You set me up. I provided information. What Marcus chose to do with it was his decision. Victor's voice carried amusement, cruelty wrapped in politeness. Your father made the mistake of trusting me too. Signed contracts he didn't read. Believed promises I never intended to keep. The Hart family learned slowly, it seems. Sophia's hands shook. Why? What did I ever do to you? You existed. Your father existed. And the Thornton family needed to be reminded that I don't forget slights. A pause, deliberately timed. Marcus cost me 3 major deals last year, outbid me on properties I'd already negotiated, made me look weak in front of my board. I don't tolerate weakness. So you destroyed my marriage to punish him? I destroyed your marriage because I could, and because watching Marcus Thornton's face when he realizes what he's done will be exquisite. He threw away something real because he's too broken to recognize it. That's not my fault. That's his. The line went dead. Sophia sat on the floor until her legs cramped, until the radiator started its nightly concert of metallic groans, until she couldn't cry anymore, because there was nothing left inside her. Marcus would never believe her. She had no proof Victor had manipulated the evidence, no way to demonstrate innocence against fabricated bank records and doctored photographs. The truth didn't matter when the lie was more convenient. She thought about calling him anyway, trying one more time to explain, but Emma's face haunted her, that small, broken expression when Sophia said goodbye, the way the little girl had whispered, "You promised you wouldn't leave." And Sophia had left. Not by choice, but the result was the same. Emma had been abandoned again, and this time, Sophia was the weapon Marcus had used to teach his daughter that love was temporary, that trust was foolish, that everyone eventually walked away. She couldn't fix it, couldn't undo the damage, so she did what she'd always done, buried herself in work and pretended the pain would eventually fade. It didn't. 2 weeks passed. Sophia fell into a rhythm of shift after shift, sleeping in 4-hour blocks, eating when she remembered to, avoiding mirrors because the hollow-eyed stranger who stared back wasn't someone she recognized. The nursing home called twice about her mother's overdue bills. Sophia promised payment she couldn't deliver, and added financial ruin to the list of catastrophes she was actively ignoring. On a Thursday afternoon during her lunch break, she sat in the hospital cafeteria pushing wilted salad around a styrofoam container when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up into Rosa Martinez's stern face. The housekeeper sat down without invitation, set a manila envelope on the table between them, and studied Sophia with eyes that missed nothing. You look terrible. Sophia managed a weak laugh. Thanks. I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here because Emma hasn't spoken since you left. Not a word. She sits in her room and rocks and refuses to eat anything except plain crackers. The therapist says it's regression, trauma response. The words hit like bullets. Sophia set down her fork, appetite vanishing completely. I didn't want to leave. I know that. I also know my employer is an idiot. Rosa pushed the envelope closer. This is everything I could find about the evidence Marcus used against you. Bank records, photographs, metadata. I had a friend look at it, someone who works in digital forensics. Want to know what she found? Sophia's heart hammered. What? The bank transfer is real. $50,000 did go into your mother's account. But it didn't come from Victor Kane's company directly. It came from a shell corporation registered in Delaware, which is owned by another shell corporation in the Caymans, which eventually traces back to Kane Enterprises. The money moved through 6 different accounts to hide the source. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look legitimate. But why would Victor give my mother money just to frame me? Rosa's expression hardened. He didn't give it to your mother. The nursing home received the funds and applied them to Helen's account automatically. Your mother never knew. You never knew. And 2 weeks later, the same amount was withdrawn and transferred to an account in Victor Kane's name. He basically laundered money through your mother's care facility to create evidence against you. Sophia felt sick. That's illegal. Very illegal. But proving it requires resources you don't have and time you can't spare. Rosa opened the envelope, spreading photographs across the table. These pictures of you meeting with Victor? Look at the timestamps. This one is dated 3 weeks before your first actual meeting with him. This one shows you at a restaurant you've never been to. My forensics friend says they're deep fakes. AI-generated images using your face mapped onto someone else's body. Good ones, too. Expensive. Sophia stared at the evidence of her own fabricated guilt. Marcus will never believe this. He saw what he wanted to see. Then make him see something else. Rosa gathered the photographs back into the envelope. I spent 22 years watching that man build walls around his heart. His mother died. His wife abandoned him and Emma. Every person he ever trusted hurt him. So yes, he assumed the worst about you. But Sophia, before you came along, I hadn't seen him smile in 3 years. He was walking through life like a ghost. You changed that. I reminded him why trusting people is dangerous. No. Victor Kane reminded him. And Marcus fell for it because he's terrified of being vulnerable. Rosa stood, leaving the envelope on the table. I can't force you to fight for him. God knows he doesn't deserve it after what he did. But Emma deserves better than 2 broken parents who gave up. So does Marcus, even if he's too stupid to realize it. She walked away before Sophia could respond, leaving her alone with evidence that proved her innocence, but changed nothing. Marcus had made his choice. He'd looked into her eyes and decided she was a liar, a manipulator, a threat to his carefully controlled world. No amount of forensic analysis would undo that fundamental lack of faith. But Emma's silence haunted her. The image of that little girl regressing into isolation, building walls even higher than before, broke something in Sophia that self-preservation couldn't protect. She'd promised Emma she'd never leave without explanation, never abandon her the way Jessica had. And technically, Sophia had kept that promise. She'd said goodbye. But the goodbye had been a lie. She hadn't wanted to leave, had been forced out by a man who chose suspicion over trust. Emma deserved to know that, deserved to understand that sometimes adults made mistakes, not because the child was unlovable, but because the adults were too damaged to accept love when it was offered. Sophia finished her shift, went home to her apartment that smelled like mildew and loneliness, and did something reckless. She called the number she'd deleted from her phone, but still had memorized. Marcus answered on the 4th ring. His voice was rough, exhausted. Sophia. Just her name, nothing else. She almost hung up. Instead, she forced words past the tightness in her throat. I need to see Emma. Silence stretched across the line, heavy with all the accusations and defenses neither of them had fully voiced. Finally, Marcus spoke. "That's not a good idea." "I don't care if it's a good idea. I care that she stopped talking. Rosa told me." Sophia's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking for 30 minutes with Emma so I can explain that what happened wasn't her fault. She's in therapy. She's getting help. She needs more than therapy. She needs to know that the people who leave her have reasons that have nothing to do with her worth." Sophia closed her eyes, fighting tears. "Please, Marcus. I know you hate me. I know you think I betrayed you, but don't punish Emma for my sins." Another long silence. Then quietly, "I don't hate you." The admission hit harder than anger would have. Sophia's breath caught. "Then what do you feel? Confused? Angry? Certain I made the right choice and terrified I made the worst mistake of my life." His voice dropped to barely audible. "I can't think straight anymore. Everything I thought I knew turned out to be lies. And I don't know how to separate truth from manipulation." "Victor Kane manipulated both of us. He set me up to make you doubt me, and it worked because you were already looking for reasons not to trust." Sophia's words came faster now, urgent. "I have evidence that the bank transfers were fake, that the photographs were doctored. Rosa's been investigating. But evidence doesn't matter if you've already decided I'm guilty." "Then why are you calling? If I'm such a lost cause, why do you care?" "Because Emma cares. Because I spent 3 weeks watching that little girl learn to trust again, and then I disappeared. And now she thinks it's her fault. That's unforgivable. So I'm asking you to let me fix what I can fix, even if we can't fix us." Marcus didn't respond immediately. Sophia heard him breathing, heard the faint sound of traffic through his phone, imagined him standing somewhere in Manhattan, wrestling with the same doubts that had been eating her alive. When he finally spoke, his voice carried resignation. "Saturday afternoon, 2:00, the penthouse. I'll be there, but I won't interfere." "Thank you." "Sophia," he stopped, seemed to struggle with something. "The evidence Rosa found. I want to see it." Hope fluttered, dangerous and fragile. "Does that mean you believe me?" "It means I'm willing to consider that I might have been wrong. That's the best I can offer right now." The line went dead. Sophia sat in her dark apartment, clutching a phone that felt like a lifeline and an anchor simultaneously, and allowed herself the smallest measure of relief. She had 3 days to prepare what she'd say to Emma. 3 days to figure out how to explain adult failures to a 5-year-old who'd already learned too young that people leave. Saturday arrived wrapped in unseasonable warmth, February pretending to be April. Sophia took the subway to the Upper West Side, her stomach churning with nerves. She'd barely slept, had rehearsed her words to Emma 100 times until they sounded hollow and scripted. But when she stood outside the penthouse door at exactly 2:00, every planned phrase evaporated. Marcus opened the door. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, unshaven, hair uncombed, wearing a wrinkled shirt that suggested he'd slept in it, or hadn't slept at all. His eyes met hers, and something complicated passed between them. Pain, regret, the ghost of what they'd almost built. He stepped aside without speaking. Sophia entered the foyer, and the familiar scent of the place hit her like a physical blow. Roses from the arrangement Rosa kept fresh on the entry table, coffee from the kitchen. the faint vanilla of Emma's favorite lotion. Home. Except it wasn't her home. Had never been, really. Emma sat in the living room on the floor by the piano, building towers with wooden blocks and knocking them down in repetitive sequence. She didn't look up when Sophia entered, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Marcus's voice was quiet. She's been like this since you left. Won't make eye contact. Won't respond to questions. The therapist says it's selective mutism triggered by abandonment trauma. Sophia's chest constricted. She moved slowly into the room, sat on the floor 6 feet from Emma, close enough to be present, far enough not to crowd. "Hey, Emma." Nothing. The little girl stacked blocks with mechanical precision, her small face blank. "I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be." Sophia kept her voice soft, even. "I promised I wouldn't leave like your mommy did, and then I left anyway." Emma's hands paused fractionally, then resumed building. "But I want you to know something important. I didn't leave because of you. I didn't leave because you did anything wrong or because I stopped caring about you. I left because your daddy and I had a fight. Adults do that sometimes. We make mistakes." The tower collapsed. Emma stared at the scattered blocks, and Sophia saw her bottom lip tremble. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. You don't have to. But I need you to understand that when people leave, it's because of their own problems. It's never, ever because the child isn't good enough, or lovable enough, or special enough." Sophia's voice thickened. "You are the most amazing little girl I've ever met. You're smart and creative and brave, and anyone who gets to be part of your life is lucky." Emma's head turned slightly, not looking at Sophia directly but acknowledging her presence. Progress. "I brought you something." Sophia pulled a small wrapped package from her bag. "It's okay if you don't want it, but I thought maybe it might help." She set the package on the floor between them and waited. Emma stared at it for a long moment, then crawled forward and picked it up with careful hands. She unwrapped it slowly to reveal a book. The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorfeld. A story about grief and comfort and being present for someone even when you don't know what to say. Emma opened it, studied the illustrations. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Sophia's throat closed. "Can I read it to you?" Emma nodded, just a tiny dip of her chin, but it was permission. Sophia moved closer, and Emma leaned against her side, tentative, testing, ready to pull away if Sophia proved unreliable again. They read together, Sophia's voice steady through the story of a child whose block tower falls, and all the animals who try to fix it with advice, until finally a rabbit just sits beside the child and listens. When they finished, Emma whispered her first words in 2 weeks. "I miss you." Sophia's tears fell freely now. "I miss you too, sweetheart." "Are you coming back?" The question Marcus had been waiting to ask, voiced by his daughter because he didn't have the courage. Sophia looked up and found him standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression so raw it hurt to witness. She chose her words carefully. "I don't know. Your daddy and I need to talk about grown-up things. But even if I can't live here, I'll still visit you if that's okay. And you can call me any time you want. I promise I'll always answer." Emma processed this with the seriousness of someone much older. "Okay. Is it okay if I hug you?" Emma nodded and wrapped her small arms around Sophia's neck, clinging with desperate strength. They stayed like that for a long time, two people who'd lost too much, holding on to each other like drowning survivors. When Emma finally pulled away, she returned to her blocks, but her movements were less mechanical now, more purposeful. Sophia stood on shaky legs and moved toward Marcus. He led her to his study and closed the door, putting walls between them and his daughter. The room was exactly as she remembered: dark wood, leather furniture, windows overlooking Central Park. But the desk was buried under papers, coffee cups multiplying like evidence of sleepless nights. Marcus gestured to a chair. Sophia sat. He remained standing, too agitated to settle. His words came out harsh, defensive. Rosa showed me what she found, the forensic analysis. And it proves someone went to considerable effort to frame you. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, the gesture achingly familiar. Victor Kane called me, the morning after you left, gloated about it, said he'd manipulated the evidence specifically because he knew I wouldn't be able to trust you. Sophia absorbed this. But you still didn't come after me. I didn't know if the forensic analysis was real either. For all I knew, you'd fabricated new evidence to counter the old evidence. I couldn't. He stopped, jaw clenching. I couldn't tell what was true anymore. So you chose to believe I was guilty. I chose to protect Emma from another betrayal. By betraying me instead? Sophia's anger finally surfaced, hot and sharp. I gave up everything for your family, Marcus. I married a man I barely knew to save your father's life. I opened my heart to your daughter, even though I knew it was temporary. And the first time someone planted doubt, you threw me away like I meant nothing. You don't understand what it's like. His voice rose to match hers. Every person I've ever trusted has hurt me. My mother died. My father was too busy building an empire to notice I was grieving. Jessica married me for money and status, then left when someone richer came along. I've spent 35 years learning that vulnerability is weakness, that love is a weapon people use against you. So you assumed I was the same? I assumed self-preservation was smarter than faith. They stared at each other across the study, both breathing hard, both bleeding from wounds that wouldn't close. The air crackled with everything they hadn't said, all the almosts and could-have-beens that died the moment Marcus chose suspicion over trust. Sophia spoke first, her voice quieter now. I can't make you believe me. I can show you evidence, give you proof, swear on everything I have that I never betrayed you. But if you don't want to believe it, you won't. And I'm too tired to fight for someone who's already decided I'm the enemy. I never said you were the enemy. You didn't have to. You looked at me like I was. Her eyes burned. Do you know what that felt like? To see the man I was falling in love with stare at me with disgust. To watch you decide in real time that everything we'd built was a lie? The admission hung between them, raw and dangerous. Marcus froze, his expression shifting through shock and something that might have been hope before settling on pain. You were falling in love with me. Past tense. Was. Sophia stood, needing distance. I was falling for the man who made me coffee in the morning, who sat with Emma during her nightmares, who looked at me sometimes like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. But that man didn't trust me when it mattered. So whatever we might have had died when you chose Victor Kane's lies over my truth. Marcus moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, see the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. I want to fix this. Why? Because you feel guilty? Because Emma misses me? Or because you actually believe I'm innocent? All of it. None of it. I don't know. His voice cracked. I just know that the past 2 weeks have been hell. I can't sleep, can't work. All I think about is your face when I told you to leave. How you looked at me like I'd destroyed you. And maybe I did. Maybe I'm exactly as broken as Jessica always said. Sophia's anger faltered, confronted with his naked vulnerability. She wanted to comfort him and hurt him in equal measure, wanted to forgive and to punish, wanted everything and nothing all at once. She settled for honesty. I can't go back to how things were. Even if you believe me now, even if we prove Victor set us up, the damage is done. You'll always wonder if I'm lying. I'll always wait for the next time you decide I'm not worth trusting. That's not a foundation for anything. Then what do we do? I don't know. But I won't be the person you practice paranoia on. I deserve better than that. She moved toward the door, then paused. Your father's transplant. Did it happen? Marcus's face darkened. No. Helen Hart withdrew consent after you left. Said she wouldn't give her kidney to a family that treated her daughter like garbage. My father's back on dialysis, waiting for another donor that probably won't come. The news should have brought satisfaction, petty revenge for what Marcus had done. Instead, Sophia just felt hollow. I'm calling about your mother. Sophia's blood went cold. Is she okay? She's stable, but we need to discuss her account. You're currently 3 months overdue on payments, and our policy requires— I know, I'm working on it. I need another week. Ms. Hart, we've extended courtesy for weeks now. If we don't receive payment by Monday, we'll have to transfer your mother to a county facility. The administrator's voice held genuine regret. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult, but we have regulations. A county facility, the kind with overcrowded rooms, overworked staff, patients left in soiled bedding for hours because there weren't enough hands to care for them all. Helen Hart deserved better, deserved safety and dignity in her final lucid months. Sophia's voice came out small. How much do I owe? $12,600. The number might as well have been 12 million. Sophia thanked her, ended the call, and sat on a bench outside the building where she'd briefly belonged. $12,000. She could pick up more shifts, sell everything she owned, beg for loans she'd never be able to repay, and still come up short. Unless she went back to Marcus and asked for money, accepted the settlement he'd offered at the beginning, took payment for services rendered, proved everyone right who'd said she was only ever after the Thornton fortune. The thought made her nauseous, but pride didn't keep her mother safe. Pride didn't pay for the care that meant Helen Hart could die with some measure of peace. She pulled out her phone and typed a text to Marcus before she could talk herself out of it. I need the settlement money. All of it. My mother's facility is kicking her out, and I have 4 days to come up with $12,000. I know what this looks like. I know it proves everything you thought about me, but I'm out of options. She sent it and waited. 3 minutes passed. 5. 10. Her phone buzzed. The money will be in your account by Monday morning. No strings, no judgment. Just take care of your mother. Relief and shame warred inside her. She typed back, "Thank you." His response was immediate. "I'm sorry I made you think you had to ask." Sophia stared at the words until they blurred, then put her phone away and went back to her apartment to wait for Monday. The money arrived exactly as promised. Not $12,000, but the full $200,000 Marcus had originally contracted. Enough to secure her mother's care for years. Enough to prove that whatever else Marcus Thornton was, he kept his financial promises, even when he couldn't keep the emotional ones. She paid the nursing home, visited Helen that same afternoon. Her mother was having a bad day, didn't recognize Sophia, kept asking for someone named Margaret, who'd been dead for 30 years. But she was safe, clean, comfortable. That was something. Sophia returned to work and tried to build a life from the rubble. Picked up where she'd left off, long shifts, longer silences, the slow grind of surviving rather than living. She visited Emma twice a week, always coordinating with Marcus to ensure they didn't overlap. The little girl was talking again, smiling again, slowly recovering from the trauma of another abandonment. That helped, Knowing Emma would be okay made the rest bearable. 3 weeks after the money transfer, Sophia's supervisor called her into the office. Dr. Patricia Morrison was 50-something, brilliant, and perpetually exhausted from running a pediatric ward with half the staff and funding they needed. She got straight to the point. I'm creating a new position, specialist in pediatric autism care. It comes with a raise, better hours, and autonomy to develop programs for our patients. I want you for it. Sophia blinked. I'm not qualified. I don't have the certifications. You have something better than certifications. You have instinct. I've watched you with these kids, Sophia. You reach them when no one else can. The hospital is willing to fund your training for any certifications you need. Say yes. It was everything she'd wanted professionally. Recognition, purpose, a chance to turn her pain into something that helped others. She should have been ecstatic. Instead, she felt numb. Can I think about it? Dr. Morrison's expression softened. Take a week. But Sophia, whatever's going on in your personal life, don't let it steal your professional future. You're too good at this to waste. Sophia promised to decide and left the office feeling like she was watching her life happen to someone else. She stopped by the hospital chapel on her way out, a small, quiet space that smelled of old wood and older faith. She wasn't particularly religious, but sometimes the silence helped. She was sitting in a back pew, staring at nothing, when someone slid into the row beside her. She looked up to find Marcus. Her heart lurched. What are you doing here? Rosa told me you were working today. I took a chance you might come here during your break. He looked uncomfortable in the sacred space, like a man who'd forgotten how to pray. I needed to see you. Marcus, we agreed. I know what we agreed. Separate visits with Emma. No contact unless necessary. But this is necessary. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Victor Kane is being investigated for fraud. The forensic evidence Rosa's friend uncovered was enough to get the FBI interested. They've frozen his assets, seized his records. It's all over the financial news. Sophia took the envelope, opened it to find printouts of news articles. Vera Victor Kane's face stared out from glossy paper, the caption reading, "Real estate mogul faces federal charges." She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. He destroyed my father. Now someone's destroying him. I guess that's justice. Is it enough? Marcus's voice was quiet, searching. Does it change anything? It proves I was telling the truth. Is that what you're asking? I'm asking if there's any chance you can forgive me for not believing you when it mattered. Sophia set the envelope aside and finally looked at him directly. Really looked. He'd shaved, combed his hair, wore a suit that suggested he was making effort, but his eyes were still haunted, still carrying the weight of every mistake he'd made. She spoke carefully. I can forgive you for being manipulated. Victor was good at it. But I can't forget that you looked at me and saw a liar. That the moment things got hard, you assumed the worst. That's not something forgiveness fixes. Then what does fix it? Time? Distance? Maybe nothing. She stood, needing space. I appreciate you telling me about Victor, and I'm grateful for the money that saved my mother. But Marcus, we're not good for each other. We bring out each other's worst fears. You'll always wonder if I'm using you. I'll always wait for you to turn on me. That's not love. That's just mutual damage. He stood too, desperation creeping into his voice. Emma asks about you every day. When are you coming back? Why don't you live with us anymore? How do I explain to a 5-year-old that I ruined everything because I was too scared to trust? You tell her the truth, that adults make mistakes, that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome the wounds we carry. Sophia's voice broke. And you promise her you'll do better next time, with the next person who tries to love you. Because it won't be me, Marcus. I can't survive another round of this. She walked away before he could respond, left him standing in the chapel, surrounded by empty pews and unanswered prayers. Outside, the February warmth had given way to cold again, winter reasserting itself with vindictive force. Sophia pulled her coat tighter and headed back to work, to the children who needed her, to the life she was building from whatever pieces remained. That night, alone in her apartment, she accepted Dr. Morrison's job offer, sent the email, and felt something small unlock in her chest. Forward motion. Not healing exactly, but survival. She could work with that. 2 days later, Emma's 6th birthday arrived. Sophia had promised to attend the party, a small gathering at the penthouse with a few of Emma's therapy group friends. She showed up with a present, a beginner's piano book with easy songs, and braced herself for seeing Marcus again. He answered the door wearing a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for coming. I promised Emma. Inside, the penthouse was decorated with purple streamers and balloons shaped like musical notes. Rosa had outdone herself with the cake, 3 tiers covered in fondant flowers, a piano crafted from white chocolate on top. Emma's face when she saw it lit up with pure joy. The party was bittersweet. Sophia watched Emma blow out candles, open presents, laugh with the other children who understood what it meant to experience the world differently. Watched Marcus hover at the edges, uncomfortable with the chaos, trying so hard to be present for his daughter. When the other kids left and Emma went down for an exhausted nap, Sophia moved to leave as well. Marcus caught her at the door. I've been thinking about what you said, about trust and damage, and how we bring out each other's worst fears. His words came slowly, like each one cost something. You're right. We're not good for each other the way we are now. But Sophia, I don't want to be this person anymore, the one who assumes betrayal, the one who pushes away anything that threatens to matter. Then change. But don't change for me. Change because Emma deserves a father who can love without suspicion. Change because you deserve a life that isn't ruled by fear. Sophia's eyes burned. I hope you find someone you can trust. Someone who doesn't trigger every defense mechanism you've ever built. But that person isn't me. What if I don't want someone else? What if every day since you left, I've regretted the choice I made? Regret isn't the same as change, Marcus. And I'm not strong enough to be your second chance. I barely survived being your first mistake. She left before he could argue further, took the elevator down 40 floors, feeling like she was descending into different atmosphere. Outside, night had fallen, and Manhattan glittered with indifferent beauty. Somewhere in this city, people were falling in love for the first time, making promises they believed they'd keep, building futures on foundations of hope. Sophia walked to the subway and went home to her small apartment, her new job, her mother who was safe but slowly disappearing into fog. It wasn't the life she'd imagined 3 months ago when she'd stood in a chapel and married a stranger, but it was hers. Hard-won and lonely, but hers. She could live with that. What she couldn't know, was that across town, Marcus sat in his daughter's room watching her sleep, holding the book Sophia had given her, and making a decision that would change everything. Marcus started therapy the Monday after Emma's birthday, not because he believed it would work, but because Rosa had physically blocked the door to his study and refused to move until he called someone. The therapist was a woman in her late 50s named Dr. Janet Reeves, who operated out of an office in Brooklyn that smelled like lavender and old books. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Her first question cut straight through. Why are you here? Marcus sat in a chair that was too soft, felt too vulnerable. Because I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, and I don't know how to live with that. Tell me about her. So he did. He spoke about Sophia for the full 50 minutes, about how she'd reached Emma when no one else could, how she'd made the penthouse feel like a home instead of a mausoleum, how he'd convinced himself she was a threat, because accepting that she was real would mean risking everything. Dr. Reeves listened without judgment, taking notes in a leather journal, and when the session ended, she gave him homework. Write down every moment you assumed betrayal instead of trust. Not just with Sophia, your whole life. I want to see the pattern. The list took 3 days to complete, filled 14 pages. Started with his mother's death, how 10-year-old Marcus had convinced himself she'd abandoned him on purpose, that if he'd been a better son, she would have fought harder to stay alive. Moved through his father's emotional absence, Jessica's infidelity, colleagues who'd stolen ideas, friends who'd disappeared when he no longer served their purposes. Every wound cataloged, every scar documented. He brought the list to his next session. Dr. Reeves read it in silence, then looked at him with something approaching compassion. You've been running a cost-benefit analysis on love your entire life. Decided the risk of pain outweighs the potential for happiness. That's not protecting yourself, Marcus. That's slow suicide. The words landed like physical blows. So what do I do? You learn that trust isn't given once and kept forever. It's built daily through small choices. You prove to yourself that you can survive disappointment without closing off completely. And you accept that some people will hurt you, but that doesn't mean everyone will. What if I can't change fast enough? What if by the time I figure this out, Sophia's moved on? Dr. Reeves set down her journal. Then you change anyway. Not for her, for yourself, for Emma. Because this version of you, the one who pushes away anything that matters, that's the version who dies alone. Marcus attended therapy twice a week, started reading books about attachment and trauma, joined a support group for single parents of autistic children where he met other fathers struggling with the same fears, the same inadequacy. Slowly, incrementally, he began to understand that his inability to trust wasn't a character flaw, but a survival mechanism that had outlived its usefulness. 6 weeks into treatment, Dr. Reeves asked about his father. Marcus hadn't mentioned William except in passing, the kidney transplant that never happened, the family legacy of emotional unavailability. Now she pressed. When was the last time you visited him? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. 3 weeks ago. He's stable on dialysis but declining. The doctors say he has maybe a year. And you're okay with that? He's my father. Of course I'm not okay with it, but you're not fighting for him either. Not searching for alternative donors, not pushing for clinical trials. Dr. Reeves leaned forward. Why? The answer came before Marcus could censor it. Because part of me thinks he deserves to suffer. He turned me into this, cold and incapable of connection. If he'd been different, maybe I would have been different too. And the other part? Marcus's throat tightened. The other part remembers that he's dying, and I'm wasting what little time we have left being angry about things neither of us can change. So which part wins? That night, Marcus drove to the hospital, found William in his usual room, hooked to machines, watching the news with glazed eyes. His father looked older than Marcus remembered, skin paper-thin, veins prominent, the physical deterioration stark in fluorescent lighting. William muted the television when Marcus entered. Didn't expect you tonight. We need to talk. About? Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed, sat down, and forced himself to speak truths he'd carried for 30 years. about how you were a terrible father, about how Mom died and you never acknowledged that I was grieving too, about how you taught me that emotions were weakness and love was a liability, and now I'm so fucked up I threw away a woman who actually cared about me because I couldn't believe someone might choose to stay. William absorbed this in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was thin but steady. I did the best I could. Your best was terrible. Yes, it was. No defense, no justification, just acknowledgement. Your mother was the only person who ever made me feel human. When she died, I didn't know how to be a father without her. So I became a CEO instead. Built an empire because that was something I understood. But you're right. I failed you. Marcus felt tears burn. I needed you. After Mom, after Jessica, I needed someone to tell me I wasn't fundamentally unlovable, and you never did. Because I didn't know how. Because my father didn't know how. Because the Thornton men have been emotionally crippled for 3 generations and we pass it down like inheritance. William's hand trembled as he reached for Marcus. But you can break the pattern. You have Emma. You had Sophia. Don't make my mistakes. I already did. Then unmake them. You're not dead yet, neither is she. Fight for something that matters instead of hiding behind money and control. They sat together in the hospital room until visiting hours ended. 2 broken men, trying to forgive each other for wounds that couldn't fully heal. When Marcus left, he felt lighter, not fixed, but less burdened by resentments he'd been dragging like chains. He drove home and found Emma awake, sitting at the piano picking out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, 1 note at a time. She looked up when he entered, her serious eyes assessing him with uncomfortable accuracy. You're sad, Daddy. Marcus sat beside her on the bench. A little bit. Because Sophia's gone? Yeah, baby. Because of that. Emma's fingers found middle C, pressed it repeatedly. Rosa says you made her leave. But Sophia says you had a fight. Who's right? The question was far too perceptive for a 6-year-old. Marcus chose honesty. Both. I made choices that hurt her. We fought because I didn't trust her when I should have. It's complicated. Do you love her? The directness stole his breath. Marcus stared at his daughter, this small person who saw through every deflection, every careful phrase. Yes, I do. Then tell her. In movies, people always feel better after someone says, I love you. Life isn't a movie, sweetheart. Sometimes love isn't enough. Emma shook her head with the certainty of childhood. Love is always enough. You just have to mean it. Later, after Emma was asleep, Marcus stood in his study surrounded by evidence of success. Awards, contracts, proof of a financial empire built through ruthless calculation. None of it mattered. None of it filled the silence or made the penthouse feel like anything other than expensive emptiness. He picked up his phone and called Sophia. She didn't answer. He tried again an hour later. Voicemail. He left a message. It's me. I know you don't want to talk, but I need to say this. I'm in therapy, learning why I sabotage everything good in my life. It's going to take time, and I might never fully fix what's broken, but I'm trying. Not because I expect you to come back, just because Emma deserves a father who isn't terrified of his own emotions. And because you were right. I need to change whether you forgive me or not. So thank you for showing me what I could be if I wasn't so busy being afraid. He hung up and waited. She didn't call back. 3 days later, Sophia showed up at the penthouse unannounced. Marcus answered the door to find her standing in the hallway wearing scrubs from a shift, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Her voice was flat, professional. We need to talk about Emma's care plan. The therapist wants to add music therapy to her treatment, and since I've been teaching her piano, they asked if I'd be willing to coordinate. But that means more visits, more overlap with you. So I need to know if you're okay with that. Marcus stepped aside, let her enter. She moved past him into the living room, maintaining careful distance. He noticed she'd lost weight, that the shadows under her eyes suggested sleep was as elusive for her as it was for him. I'm more than okay with it. Emma's been asking about piano lessons. This isn't about what you want, Marcus. It's about what's best for her. I know, and what's best for her is having you involved, however you're willing to be. He paused, gathering courage. I got your voicemail silence. I didn't know what to say. You're in therapy. That's good, I'm glad. But it doesn't change what happened. I'm not asking it to. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I can be different. Marcus moved closer, careful not to crowd. Not as your husband, not even as your friend, just as someone who shares responsibility for Emma's well-being. Can we start there? Sophia studied him, searching for manipulation or a hidden agenda, finding, perhaps, only exhaustion that mirrored her own. Okay, but boundaries, Marcus. I come for Emma, not for you. We keep things professional and focused on her needs. Agreed. And if you make one comment, one single implication that I'm here because I want something from you, I'm gone. Permanently. Understood. She nodded, satisfied. Piano lessons twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays after school. I'll coordinate with her therapist about incorporating music into her treatment plan. You can be present or not. Your choice. I'd like to be there. Then be there. But Marcus, her voice softened fractionally, don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm doing this for Emma, not because I've forgiven you. I know. She left 20 minutes later with a schedule and boundaries firmly established. Marcus watched her go and felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The understanding that change happened in increments, that trust was rebuilt through consistency, that maybe if he proved reliable enough for long enough, Sophia might eventually believe he was worth the risk. The piano lessons began the following Tuesday. Sophia arrived promptly at 4, let herself in with the key Marcus had given her years ago, and set up in the music room. Emma bounced with excitement, showing off the songs she'd been practicing. Sophia praised her progress with genuine warmth, then gently corrected her finger placement and introduced new concepts. Marcus watched from the doorway, silent. Sophia acknowledged him with a brief nod, but focused entirely on Emma, coaxing music from the piano with patience that seemed infinite. When the lesson ended, Emma hugged Sophia goodbye and ran off to show Rosa what she'd learned. Sophia packed her materials efficiently, preparing to leave. Marcus stepped into the room. Thank you for doing this. I told you, it's for Emma. Still, it means something. To both of us. Sophia's expression was carefully neutral. How's your father? The question surprised him. Declining. They're running out of options for dialysis. His body's starting to reject the treatment. I'm sorry. Helen's still unwilling to donate? Sophia's face closed off. My mother doesn't make decisions anymore. The Alzheimer's progressed. She's in late stage now. On good days, she knows her own name. On bad days, she thinks she's 12 years old. The nursing home has power of attorney for medical decisions. Sophia, don't. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. She grabbed her bag. I should go. Wait. Marcus pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. This came today. It's the final paperwork for Victor Kane's prosecution. The FBI wants victim statements from everyone he defrauded. Your father's estate is listed. If you testify, you might be able to recover some of what David lost. Sophia took the envelope with trembling hands. How much are we talking about? The investigator estimated 60 to 80,000. Not everything, but substantial. Tears welled in her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. My mother's care costs $4,000 a month. This would buy her another year. Maybe 2. Then testify. Get what's yours, what your father deserved. She looked at him, really looked, and Marcus saw the walls crack fractionally. Why are you helping me? Because Victor Kane destroyed your family to get to mine. That makes it my responsibility. He moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her green eyes. And because I owe you more than I can ever repay, this is the least I can do. Sophia's breath hitched. For a moment, Marcus thought she might reach out, might close the distance between them. Instead, she stepped back, clutching the envelope like armor. Thank you for this, for letting me teach Emma, for... She stopped, composing herself. I'll see you Thursday. She left before he could respond. Marcus stood in the music room, listening to the echo of piano notes, feeling like he'd gained and lost something simultaneously. The weeks passed in careful rhythm. Piano lessons twice a week, brief professional exchanges. Emma's steady improvement both musically and emotionally. Marcus attended therapy religiously, dismantling defense mechanisms he'd spent decades building. Dr. Reeves pushed him hard, forced him to confront the ways he'd weaponized his own pain, how he'd turned survival instincts into weapons that hurt everyone who tried to get close. In late April, William's condition worsened dramatically. Rushed to the ER with cardiac complications from the failed dialysis. Marcus spent 3 days at the hospital, watching machines keep his father alive, while doctors debated options that didn't exist. On the 3rd night, William woke lucid and asked to speak with Marcus alone. The nurses cleared out, leaving father and son in the harsh fluorescent light of intensive care. William's voice was barely audible. I'm dying. The doctors are working on I'm dying, and we both know it. So let me say something while I can. William's hand found Marcus's, the grip weak but insistent. Sophia Hart is the best thing that ever happened to you, and you're an idiot for letting her go. Marcus's throat closed. She doesn't want me. Because you didn't fight for her. You gave up the moment things got hard. Just like I gave up on being your father when being a parent required emotional labor I didn't know how to do. William's eyes were clear, sharp with regret. Don't die like me, surrounded by things you bought instead of people who loved you. Swallow your pride, beg if you have to, but don't let fear win. What if I try and she still says no? Then at least you tried. At least you proved to yourself you're capable of vulnerability. William coughed, a wet sound that made monitors spike. I never told your mother I loved her enough. Never said the words that mattered because I thought providing and protecting were sufficient. When she died, I had all these unsaid things choking me. Don't make that mistake. William fell asleep mid-sentence, exhausted from the conversation. Marcus sat with him through the night, holding his father's hand, grieving for all the years they'd wasted being emotionally unavailable to each other. At dawn, Emma called. Rosa had brought her to visit, and she wanted to see Grandpa. Marcus met them in the waiting room, his daughter's worried face breaking what remained of his composure. Emma hugged him fiercely. Is Grandpa going to die? Probably, sweetheart. Soon. Like Grandma? Like Grandma. Emma processed this with her characteristic seriousness. Then, in a voice small but certain, she asked the question Marcus had been avoiding. Can Sophia come? She makes sad things less sad. Marcus pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and texted Sophia. William's dying. Emma's asking for you. I know I have no right, but if you could come, just for her. The reply came within minutes. Which hospital? Sophia arrived an hour later, still in scrubs from a night shift, looking like she'd run the entire way. Emma spotted her first and launched into her arms with a sob. Sophia caught her, held her, whispered comfort Marcus couldn't hear. Then she looked at him over Emma's head, and her eyes held something complicated. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Compassion for shared grief. How bad is he? Hours. Maybe a day. Sophia nodded and took Emma's hand. Want to say goodbye to Grandpa? They went into the room together, 3 people bound by loss. William was awake, barely, and his face softened when he saw Emma. There's my beautiful girl. Emma climbed carefully onto the bed, mindful of tubes and wires. Grandpa, you have to get better. Daddy needs you. Your daddy's stronger than he knows. He has you. That's enough. William's eyes shifted to Sophia. And you, the nurse who saved my life by agreeing to marry my son. Sophia's voice was gentle. I'm sorry I couldn't go through with the donation. Don't be. You did exactly right. Marcus needed to learn he can't solve everything with money and arrangements. William coughed again. Take care of them. Both of them. They need you more than they'll admit. Mr. Thornton, William, please. We're family, however briefly. Tears tracked down Sophia's face. She took William's free hand, the one Emma wasn't clutching, and held it. You have a beautiful granddaughter. She's brilliant and kind. You should be proud. I am. First time in my life I'm proud of something that matters. They stayed for 2 hours. Emma told stories about piano lessons in school. Sophia hummed quietly when William's pain made him restless. Marcus watched the woman he loved comfort the father who'd never known how to comfort anyone, and something fundamental shifted in his chest. This was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, just presence. Showing up when things were hard, offering kindness without expectation of return. William slipped into unconsciousness around noon. The doctor said it was peaceful, that he wouldn't wake again. Marcus made the call to remove life support, sat with his father as machines were disconnected, as breathing slowed and stopped, as the man who'd shaped him through absence finally left completely. Sophia stayed through it all, held Emma when the little girl cried, made phone calls Marcus couldn't manage, coordinated with Rosa about arrangements. She didn't leave until the hospital staff came to prepare the body, didn't speak platitudes about better places or ended suffering, just existed beside Marcus in his grief, solid and real. In the hallway outside the room, she finally broke the silence. I should take Emma home. She's exhausted. Thank you for being here, for all of it. I didn't do it for you. I know, but it still meant everything. Marcus gathered courage from desperation. Can we talk? After the funeral? After things settle? Just talk. Sophia studied him with eyes that had seen too much. About what? about whether second chances are possible, whether people can actually change, or if we're all just performing better versions of our damage. His voice cracked. About whether you could ever trust me again. Marcus, I love you. I should have said it before. Should have said it every day we were together. But I was too afraid, and then it was too late. And I've been living with that regret like broken glass in my chest. The words tumbled out, desperate and raw. You don't have to say anything back. You don't have to forgive me or give me another chance. I just need you to know that you weren't imagining what we had. It was real. At least for me. Sophia's face crumpled. She looked like she wanted to speak but couldn't find words. Instead, she turned and walked away, taking Emma with her, leaving Marcus alone in a hospital corridor with his grief and his too-late confession. The funeral was small. William had wanted it that way. No grand memorial, no business associates performing sorrow they didn't feel. Just family. Marcus, Emma, Rosa, and the few people who'd actually known William as a person rather than a portfolio. Sophia came, sat in the back pew, didn't approach Marcus afterward, but squeezed his hand briefly in passing. The gesture was everything and nothing, and Marcus held on to it like a drowning man grasping driftwood. In the weeks after William's death, Marcus threw himself into settling the estate. Discovered his father had left everything to Emma, with Marcus as trustee. A fortune worth billions, but also a handwritten letter addressed to Marcus, tucked into William's desk drawer. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Good riddance. I was a terrible father and we both know it, but maybe I can be useful in death. Use the money to chase what matters. Sell the company if you want. Retire. Spend time with Emma and whoever you're lucky enough to convince to love you. Don't make my mistakes. Don't die wondering what might have been if you'd been braver. Also, I had my lawyer research Helen Hart's medical situation. There's a specialist in Boston, Dr. Rebecca Chen, working on experimental Alzheimer's treatments. Trials are closing soon, but I've arranged funding. If Sophia's interested, it might give her mother a few more good months. Consider it my apology for being such a bastard. Love your daughter. Love yourself. And for God's sake, fight for Sophia before she's smart enough to move on. Marcus read the letter 3 times, crying harder each pass. His father's final gift wasn't money, but permission. Permission to choose happiness over duty, love over safety, vulnerability over control. He called Dr. Chen that same day, arranged for Helen Hart to be evaluated for the trial. Then he called Sophia and explained what William had done. Her voice shook. This could give her 6 more months, maybe a year of clarity before the end. Then let's make sure she gets it. Why would your father do this, after everything? Because he knew what it felt like to lose someone too soon. And he didn't want you to go through that without fighting. Marcus paused. Can I see you? Actually talk, not just logistics about Emma or your mother? The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Then, quietly, meet me at the hospital chapel. Tomorrow. 2:00. He was there at 1:30, pacing the small space like a caged animal. Sophia arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and determined in equal measure. They sat in the back pew where he'd found her months ago, and the symmetry felt significant. Sophia spoke first. I've been thinking about what you said, about love and second chances, and whether people can change. Marcus's heart hammered. And I think change is possible, but not fast, not easy. Trust takes time to rebuild. She turned to face him fully. I can't go back to how things were. Can't move back into the penthouse and pretend the past few months didn't happen. but maybe we could start over. Slowly. See if what we had was real or just circumstance. I'll take slow. I'll take anything you're willing to give. I need promises, Marcus. Real ones. No more assumptions. No more pushing me away when things get hard. We talk. We fight if we have to. But we don't run. I promise. On Emma's life. On everything I have. I won't run again. Sophia searched his face, looking for cracks in the foundation, finding, perhaps, something solid enough to risk. Then let's try. For real this time. But if you hurt me again, if you let fear make you cruel, we're done. Permanently. No third chances. Understood. Marcus reached for her hand, and she let him take it. Her fingers were cold, trembling. He warmed them between his palms. I love you. And I'm going to spend however long it takes proving that I mean it. Sophia's smile was small, tentative, but real. Then prove it. So he did. Over weeks that turned into months, Marcus showed up, consistent, present, honest about his fears instead of letting them fester. He attended Emma's piano recitals and Sophia's mother's medical appointments, took Sophia on actual dates, dinner, museums, walks through Central Park where he'd first realized he was falling for her, built trust through small daily choices, to be vulnerable, to communicate, to choose connection over self-protection. In July, Helen Hart entered the clinical trial. The first few weeks showed dramatic improvement, moments of clarity where she recognized Sophia, remembered conversations, existed fully in the present. Sophia cherished each lucid hour, recording voice memos of her mother telling stories about Sophia's childhood, about David Hart before the bankruptcy, about a life that felt increasingly distant. Marcus was there for all of it, drove Sophia to Boston for appointments, held her when the good days gave way to bad ones, learned that love wasn't about dramatic gestures, but about steady, unglamorous presence. And slowly, incrementally, Sophia's walls came down. She laughed more, touched him more freely, let herself imagine a future that didn't end in abandonment. 6 months after William's funeral, Marcus proposed. Not with a ring or grand production, but quietly, in the music room, while Emma played piano and Sophia listened with her eyes closed. He knelt beside her chair. Marry me. For real this time. Not because of contracts or dying fathers. Just because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Sophia opened her eyes, and they were full of tears. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. I know, I'm terrible at this. But I mean it, every word. Ask me again in a year. If we're still together, if we've survived the hard stuff, ask me then. I'll say yes. It wasn't the answer he'd hoped for, but it was honest, real. A promise that came with conditions and caution, built on understanding rather than fantasy. Marcus smiled. 1 year. I'll wait. Emma looked up from the piano, her serious eyes bright. Does this mean Sophia's staying? Sophia crossed to the bench, sat beside the little girl who taught her what family could mean. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm staying. And in the music room of a penthouse that finally felt like home, 3 people who'd been broken by loss began the slow work of healing together.